So it's wonderful to be speaking at the Empty Gate Zen Center in person. I can remember just before the pandemic, I think we were talking about the 8-day retreat was growing so much, we were thinking about actually having to have rent porta potties to handle the number of people here. And then I have another memory. Just a couple of months ago, the Zen Center was painted, and all of the windows were painted shut. So Zen Master Bon Soeng and I went around to each of the windows, and with X-Acto knives, we cut open each of the windows and opened them up again. And it actually had that feeling when you have a statue of a dragon or Bodhidharma or the Buddha, and you paint the eyes and it comes to life. We opened the windows again, and the life has returned to our Zen Center. So as Zen Master Bon Soeng said, we are in the midst of an 8-day retreat. For those of you who have not been on a retreat, let me tell you a little bit about it. It is a lot of acting together. Our temporal rules say, always act with other people. And our founding Zen Master Seung San, who was not a native English speaker, came up with this phrase, together action. He made a lot of these special little phrases to communicate what he meant. And together action means we do things together. First thing in the morning, we say the 4 vows, and then we do 108 prostrations together. We all follow the teacher and bow together, whether it's a standing bow or from standing to a kneeling bow, all together. Then we chant together. And sometimes we have to search for the right tune. We have to use our ears and listen for the note that our teacher is chanting at. And then we find the harmony and we all chant together. And the instructions are, you listen to your own voice and you listen to the voices of the others and you become one. And then we sit together. And during the sitting, the chugpi is hit and everybody stands up. Everybody stands up. There's no, you can't sit through the walking meditation. Everybody stands up and we walk in a line. And we stay in the order of our cushions and we walk around the Dharma room. And then we eat together. And we haven't yet re-instigated our 4-bowl ritual for eating. So those of you who have joined since the pandemic, you have another joy to discover, another level of intensity and another level of together action with the 4 bowls. All this together action is teaching us function. We act with other people. And we never use this word in our Zen centers, but we attune with each other. Zen Master Bon Soeng asked me, I also practice a martial art, Aikido. I've been practicing for almost 37 years now. And so he asked me, Zen and this martial art Aikido, how do they fit together? And one of my answers, probably not a very good one, but in both of them we wear funny costumes and we bow together. There's a lot of bowing in Aikido, and there's a lot of bowing here. But I want to talk about that ritual, that phenomena of facing somebody else and bowing together. It's in it's an attunement. We're attuning with another person. And we're learning this sensitivity, and we're learning this action that functions with other people. So we're not just going through the actions, we're looking at the other person, we're showing up completely, and we're bowing together. We do the same action when we walk into the Dharma room. So we come to the door, and we put our hands together in hapchang, and we bow, and then we step in. And in that moment, this head, which does, holds all of our thinking, goes down. And if we bow deeply, the head and the heart and the belly are all on the same level. And if we do a prostration, at that moment, our head, heart, and belly are all on the same level. And then we stand up, and something has changed, right? And so there's this attunement. And in Aikido, the word I in Aikido means harmony. And in Aikido, we are blending with our partner's attack. And there's this moment we face our partner, we engage, we blend, and then there's either a throw or a pin. And it's that same feeling of meeting the others, blending with them, and then, a resolution. And so for me, in the Zen Center and in the Aikido dojo, there's that meeting the other, attuning, and this complete action. Hands together, bow. It's interesting, we don't use the word attunement in either Zen or in Aikido. And attunement is very important. It's how we show up in the moment, but it's not our complete teaching. And I'm going to skip right to the end and give away the punchline. So if you play a musical instrument like the violin or the cello, you have to tune your instrument. And if you play with somebody else, you have to make sure that your instrument and their instrument are in tune. And if you play for a symphony, there is a whole ritual for tuning at the beginning. The violin in the first seat plays A, and everybody plays together. And that's how a symphony, probably all of their instruments are already tuned, probably. But that's how they go from good to great, is from at that very first moment, they all come together, they all become one, and then they're ready. Bam, the conductor lifts the baton and they're ready for that first note. And so when we come to the Zen Center, we're training to meet the moment, meet the other person or situation, and meet it completely. But nobody comes to the orchestra to hear everybody tune, right? So the attunement itself is not the point. It's what you do with the attunement, right? And so we're doing this together action, but it has a purpose. It's to completely show up to the situation, and then we use that don't know mind and open up the moment. Yeah? So let me give an example. When I work, as Zen Master Bon Soeng said, I work for hospice. And the most poignant moment of my day always when I'm visiting patients is that moment where I arrive at their residence, arrive at their door, whether their front door or the door to their room. And just like everybody else, I have a family and there's stuff going on, and I've been through traffic, and maybe I've had another visit already and I'm thinking about that other visit. I'm in San Francisco, so there's parking. I mean, my goodness. And then I'm arriving at this doorstep, and on the other side of the door, there's somebody who is sick. their time is precious. They may have been in that same bed for days, for weeks, maybe months, or even longer. Yeah. And so they're on a very different wavelength than I am. How do I arrive? How do I actually show up for them? How do I walk through that door? So for me, there's a very strong correlation between walking into the Dharma room, doing that bow, and stepping in, and with my work, walking into a patient's room. There's that moment where I come back and I turn that attention back to myself. What's going on with me? What am I thinking about right now? What's going on? And is there a little ritual that I can do to show up completely? And so I have several. Just like our chanting, I often use hearing. What can I hear right now? What can I see right now? What kind of neighborhood does this person live in? When I walk into their house, I'm just looking around. I'm trying to attune to what this person's life, right? And I often use don't know. Just what is this? Don't know, and just down into my body. What is this? Don't know, and arrive in this moment. And then I meet the person. And then there are other practices that I do with the person. I notice maybe how fast they're breathing, how fast they speak. And I, of course, not of course, I never speak faster than somebody else speaks. If my patient, if I notice that they're speaking at this pace, I will make sure that I'm speaking about the same pace. I'll listen to their word choice, and if they're using long words or very, no more than 2 syllables, I'll try to mirror that. And I'll try to come sit down as close to eye level as I can. So using all these different techniques to try to attune, to really show up for that situation. But the most important thing is that don't know mind, just what is this? Don't know. And in that moment, what wants to appear? Maybe this patient is really angry and they really just want to explode. Maybe they want to watch Price is Right. I've watched many hours of Price is Right at my job. Maybe they want to talk about something really serious. Maybe they wanted to, but that moment is past and they're not able to focus well enough to talk about what they want to talk about. So how to show up completely and then let whatever wants to arise in that moment arise is really what our practice is about. I can get attached to being attuned. In our practice, what that looks like is I want our chanting to be nice and I want to enjoy it. But that's not the point. The Zen Master Soeng is very clear in the chant book at the beginning about what the purpose of chanting. It's listening to our own voice, hearing the voices of others, become one, right? And then the purpose of bowing is become one, but just really, just this moment. What is this? Don't know. Another bow, right? And that together action. So, so important that all of these practices that we do at the Zen Center, working together, that we use them moment to moment to attune with other people, to feel what's going on, and in that moment, what is this? What's arising right now? And let that moment, bam, arise right there. And I think that's never as poignant as with my children. And I want to tell a story. A couple of weeks ago, my daughter was coming home from school, and my daughter is having not a fun social life with her class. And she's now in her last semester before she graduates from this school and goes on to high school. So, and the class, it's getting very polarized, and she has a few friends who she really likes, mostly boys, and she has some people who are not very nice to her, and some days are very difficult. And I went to pick her up one day at the bus stop, and she got in the car, and I said, "How was your day, Pele?" And she said, "Not really good." And then she was silent for a second. "Because I have no friends." And then there was silence, and I saw something appear at that moment. It was a story, but it was a visual of a story. And without much preparation, I just started to tell the story as I saw it arising. There once was an acorn. And in the beginning, this acorn was nothing more than a bump on this branch. And it was like a twig, but then the twig became a branch, and then there were those little bumps. Some of the bumps turned into leaves, some of the bumps turned into acorns, some of the bumps turned into other twigs that were going to become other branches. And at first, all of these little bumps and twigs and leaves got along all right. But as they grew bigger and bigger, and they each began to get a little more character and trying to feel out who they were, it started to get a little bit crowded. And not only that, this acorn looked around and realized this really is not my branch. This is not where. How did I get here? This really isn't my branch. And so it held on, but there was a point where it naturally grew into itself, and it fell, and it let go. And it was scary, but there was this point where it just knew it needed a different situation. Everything had to change, so I'm just going to let go. And it fell, and it landed on the ground. All these things were going around down there, mycelium and dirt and insects, and this acorn found itself in a new place. And somehow it found itself underground, and it sent out these roots, and these roots grew out, and they grew, and they were feeling around. But there was something different this time. These roots could decide, do I want to touch these roots over here, or do I want to touch these roots over there? And it started to realize, I can make my own community now. I have some power. And then this acorn threw up this plant, and it started to grow up and out. And the more it grew, the more leaves grew, the more branches and twigs, the more character it got, and the more different it looked than every other tree. And it was just the perfect tree, and underneath it was connected to the other trees, that it wanted to be connected with. And it was connected to the mycelium and all the other nutrients that it needed. And it was reaching up to the sun, but in its own personal, unique way. And she looked at me and she said, "That was a great story." So everyone, it is such an honor to do all of this together action with you, bowing together, eating together, sitting together, living and doing chores together, and it's all about learning this deep sensitivity, but more important is that moment to moment, we wake up, we see each other clearly, and we see our function, and just do it. Bam. Thank you, everyone.
I thank Marshall for that lovely story. It brought me right back to when I was about that age, and it reminded me how the transition, at least I went through, going from a little bit earlier, I guess, but being a young kid and kind of outgrowing my friends and not knowing where to go from there. And probably Pele's a little too young to realize this, but I think if we all look at our lives, we will see that out of those difficult moments in our lives, actually, that's when the acorn starts to grow. And most of us do all we can to avoid those difficult moments, those times where things are falling apart. And yet, just as the Buddhist symbol of the lotus growing out of the mud, it's from that moment that something alive can appear. And that's what we're doing here at the Zen Center. That's what you're all doing here as you join us together. We're finding aliveness. We're finding a life that's authentic and real. So when Zen Master Seung-san came to the United States, he left Korea and he spent about 10 years in Japan before he came to the United States. And of course, the cultures are very different, East and West. In Japan, and probably Korea too, there's this culture where if the nail gets too high, it gets beaten down so that everything is kind of harmonious and even. So he came to the United States and he saw that we weren't like that at all. Everybody was strutting about, showing off their feathers and really trying to be free on the outside. And the way we chant the Heart Sutra in Korean, we did it in English tonight, but we do it very similarly to the way we do the Heart Sutra in English. And everybody, as Marshall said, everybody chants the same. If you go to a Korean monastery, when they're chanting the Heart Sutra, everybody's doing their own thing. It's completely different. And I remember somebody asking Zen Master Seung-san about this, and he said, in Korea, everybody's taught to be the same. So there you have to learn how to be yourself. So the practice is very different. Here in the United States, nobody knew how to be harmonious and attuned together. So here we had to learn how to put down our egos and actually connect with other people, because our culture encourages self-expression. So there's no one way to train. Every person, every culture, every situation presents the conditions that have to be met with practice. One of the one of the lines that Zen Master Sung used in his very unusual English style was he would say, human beings, number one bad animal. Human beings make a mess of everything. And what Buddhism teaches us is we make a mess of things because we put ourselves, first of all, we separate ourselves from everything. There's I and there's you. And I am the important one, and you are an object in my life that I will use to get what I want. And out of that separation comes intense suffering. You know, one of the changes in the world in my lifetime over the last 50, 60 years has been the recognition of ecological understanding and what's the word I'm looking for? The ecosystem that includes all the different parts of the system. And all these systems together are one ecosystem. And human beings are very bad at learning how to do that. So all of what Marshall was talking about were the ways that we are trying to learn to put down our self-centeredness, to put down our I, me, my mind that always is grasping for me. What do I want? So all these things that Marshall was talking about are our practices to teach us how to become one with the ecosystem. Each piece of the ecosystem has a unique job to do in that system. But if you get too far out over your skis and you start to grab too much for yourself, you're not doing your job. You're actually destroying the whole system. And as a psychotherapist, one of the things we learned about families is that families and groups are systems. And a system works together. And when any one part of the system changes, it changes the whole system. Every other part of the system is impacted. So as Marshall was showing us, when we're on retreat, as we are, we learn to act together to get things accomplished, to keep the system running. And we've been doing this a long time together. We had a couple of years where we weren't together, but we've learned how to work together. And it's not so easy. There's a lot of stuff that comes up. Being the teacher on the retreat, I have this unique position of sitting in a room and hearing everybody talk. And what goes on the inside is not always the same as what appears on the outside. So we practice to find this harmony. We practice to find that place where I and you come together. Just as Marshall in that lovely story talked about the trees impacting each other. Without the rain, the acorn doesn't get the nourishment it needs to grow. Those, what was that word, mycelium, are so integral to taking dead things and composting them and creating fertile soil for everything to grow. Every piece of the system is necessary. So we have to learn how to both be part of the system and to completely inhabit our own space and reveal our own true nature. It's a both-and world, working to bring everything to be together and become one, and also to express the complete uniqueness that we are. None of us are the same. I had this odd I guess it was a thought during meditation. I was thinking how everybody's face is different. And we're one species. We have so much DNA that's exactly the same. We all have hands and feet and all the different parts. And they're, even our hands are all different. So even though we're the same, we're also completely different. And how we hold opposites and bring them together and make it one harmonious system is a big part of what practice is about. So thanks, Marshall, for opening that up, for sharing that with us, and for us to be able to look and find a way that we can work together and be ourselves simultaneously, both and.